that this Zoom has been updated, at least on my end. I don't know if it's updated on your end, so it should look a little slicker and easier to use. We are ready to start chapter 20. Imagine that, after what, 51 classes, we're finally ready to start chapter 20. And chapter 20 is a very, very important chapter, and it covers the point this out, that and if my internet goes unstable, let me know, because I just got a notification on that.
Yeah, you are unstable.
Yes.
All right. I'm always unstable. That much I know.
Oh my, but
The internet's unstable. All right, but you can hear me now, right?
yeah, so you were kind of frozen for a second or two.
All right. Okay. Good. So the Tanya, actually, the book of Tanya actually has 5 sections. 5 sections written by the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe. The first section is the section we're learning. The second section is all about the oneness of God. And there are clear indications that the Alter Rebbe was debating which section to put first. The section about the oneness of God or the Tanya first. Ultimately, he decided to put the Tanya first. But even within the Tanya, we will now have 2 chapters that will deal with the oneness of God. Why? Because, as you recall from the last 2 chapters, we are currently in the shorter path. What is the shorter path? There's one path of connecting with God, which relies on deep meditation and coming to flaming love towards God and deep level of awe, but that is not so easy. Then there is also another way, and that is to access the hidden love that is within us. In chapter 18 and 19, we discussed how is it that we have a hidden love, and we described that it's due to our godly souls that are given to us from the patriarchs and matriarchs. And then we discussed in chapter 19, we proved that hidden love exists within everybody, because every Jew is willing, or pretty much everyone is willing, to give up their lives, and we gave modern day examples. But we still haven't explained, so what relevance does that have to me? Okay, I get it. There is a deep hidden love, and I get it. If I was given a test of faith, I would probably withstand it. But the day-to-day is not so easy, Just to give an example, let's imagine someone is given a choice of, believe in God or, a test of faith, and his only way out is to jump into the water. So he jumps into the so he's saved. I think for now, because this person was about to give up their life, now they're going to live the most reverent life and they're never going to do anything wrong. No, in fact, I can prove to you it's not the case. How often do I meet people that have been literally saved by a miracle, and they say that it's God, and some of them even change their lives in certain aspects, but I have not seen yet a single person who has overnight become completely righteous. In other words, to the point where they never make any mistakes. They never submit to their evil inclination. All right, some people become better, sure, but I haven't met yet a person who, because of a miracle that they clearly attribute to God, never, make any mistakes. And the same applies, to people who are willing to give up their lives for God. Yes, we are all willing to give up our life for God, but in day-to-day decisions, we are not necessarily willing to give it all for God. And the Tanya is going to have to develop a thesis with which to change that idea. In other words, how to tap into our hidden love that is willing to give up our lives for God, and how to tap into that every single time that we are faced with a test of faith. But before the Alter Rebbe dives into that, he is going to start, kind of like I've said many times, the Alter Rebbe likes to prove his points. And he's going to prove it with a very fascinating discussion about the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments, as we know, is the first instance of someone downloading data from a cloud. No, I'm kidding. Okay. The Ten Commandments are, of course, the basis of what many people call monotheistic religion or Judaism. You may even see now there's movements to put the Ten Commandments in classrooms. Although we know that we have 613 commandments, and when I meet people, they're like surprised there's 613 commandments. But so what makes the Ten Commandments special? When God came to the Jewish people to give them the Torah, he didn't give them everything all at once. He gave it over the 40 years, the entire Torah, all 613 commandments. But God decided that the first time he meets them, and the last time as well, till the Mashiach comes, that the first time he meets them, he is going to give the Jewish people and give us 10 commandments. So let me ask you the question. Why would God choose 10 commandments or these 10 commandments? Why? I mean, you've got 613 to choose from. Why 10? Why not 20? Why not 5? Why not 15? I know the joke, I give you the 15 commandments, I mean the 10 commandments, okay? But obviously, God is not a jokester. God is giving 10 commandments for a reason. If God knows he's giving us 613, why start with the 10? Yes, Adam?
It's the basis for all the other ones. You start with something broad, and then you later on it gets more narrow, but it's all based in the original 10.
Very good. Very good. You start with something broad, and I would add, not you later on get to something more narrow, but you get to more detailed. That's the word I would use. But yeah, it's the same idea. Yes, correct. God gives us the 10 commandments, which, so to speak, encompass all the other commandments. You have certain commandments that are very much about between us and God, right? Very basic commandments. You should, there's one God, there's no other gods. Keep the Shabbat. And then you have a bunch of commandments which are between man and man, which is the general 613 commandments. Some of them are about between us and God. Some of them are about us and human beings. So the 10 commandments as a whole are what we would call general commandments, although they are of the 10 of 613, they are more general commandments, and they include within them the 613. But now I'm going to take you to a deeper level. When God actually gave us the 10 commandments, did God actually speak all the 10 commandments? Did we hear all 10 commandments from God?
No, if I remember the chapter, first he gave the 10 commandments, and then he gave more.
I think it was only 2 that he tried, and then people asked Moses to be the middle person. Wasn't it like that?
Yes. Very good. Yeah, very good. Yep. And
Okay.
in the Torah portion over there, you will see that the Jewish people came to complain to God. They says we can't handle it. It's too much.
Power.
But what did God, right? So what did God end up telling us? Now Anita said 2 commandments. It's clear that God didn't tell us all, because it's hard to say. I'll tell you why. Because if you read the chapter in Exodus 19, it says God said all 10 of the commandments. So there you would see all 10 commandments. But I'll show you over here. That's in the 10 commandments. If you take a look over here, this is the reading right after the 10 commandments. Okay, so here's the 6th reading. You have all the 10 commandments here. It ends off with, do not covet. Okay, then reading number 7. It says over here, all the people saw the voices and the torches, the sounds of the shofar, the smoke mountains. The people saw and trembled. They stood from afar. They said to Moses, you speak with us and we will hear, but let God not spare us, lest we die. So they said that we can't handle God speaking to us. Now, our tradition tells us a little deeper than that. It's not just that lest we die, but they actually died and God brought them back. And so then it says that, And our tradition is that God said the first two commandments, and then Moses said the rest. Okay, so and it explains here in the chapter. So if God knew that the Jewish people couldn't handle it, why did God tell them the Ten Commandments to begin with? God knows the Jews can't handle it because, as the Torah says, God always wants you to remember, right? Just remember, right? You have seen that from the heavens I've spoken to you, right? We Jews have very good at amnesia. We're very good at forgetting. Right? We have a good amnesia, but we're very good at forgetting. But God knew that, he had to give us this at least one time, this message that God speaks to us. But our tradition is that God spoke only the first two to us. In fact, it's alluded to in the book of Psalms. It's Psalm 62. I'll put it on the screen. Psalm 62. Now, whenever, just a little trick, whenever you put in search term for a scripture on Google, if you want to make sure you get a Jewish source, you put in the word Chabad. So Psalm 62 Chabad, right? If I don't write the word Chabad, I get other sources. Okay, so I always put in the word Chabad, and here I'll go to verse 12. This is just one instance of we see God speaking to us the first two commandments. Here it says, God spoke one thing, I heard, for God has strength. And that's an allusion to the fact that God is able to say two things at once. And this is an allusion to the fact that God told us at once two of the 10 commandments. Okay, that's just a hint. Regardless, I'm not going to go into all the tradition of it here, but you get the idea. And you saw my little graphic they're downloading from the cloud. But you get the idea that if, as Adam said earlier correctly, that all the 10 commandments are broad and general, and that's why God gave us those 10 at that moment, but they really include everything else. The same thing we're now going to extend applies to the two commandments. The only two God actually directly spoke to us, not through Moses, was the first two commandments. And the reason why those two commandments God spoke to us and not the others is because within the 10 commandments themselves, those two commandments are even more broad and contain all of the rest of the commandments of the Torah within them. Okay?
That's a very good point.
Okay, so let us now read the Tanya that says this exact point. Why is it going to be important? Because the Tanya is going to ask, by what virtue are these 10 commandments, are the first two commandments broad enough to encompass all the 613? What element is there in these first two commandments that contains all the 613 commandments? All right, so let's take a look at the Tanya. We're at chapter 20, page 231, Practical Tanya, which I hope you all have. All right. I'm going to skip the introduction. All right, our discussion will center on teaching the Zohar, which the Tanya now cites. So this idea of Zohar. Now, this thing is known to everybody, that the mitzvah to accept only one God and the biblical prohibition against idolatry, which are the first two of the 10 commandments, which is namely, I am God your God, and you shall not have any other gods, are a comprehensive statement which thematically incorporates the whole Torah. Since the commandment, I am God, incorporates all 248 positive mitzvos, and the commandment, you shall not have any other gods, incorporates 365 prohibitions. So this is just saying, simply put, as we mentioned earlier, the first two commandments encompass everything, and of that, more detailed, the first commandment is a positive commandment.
We can't hear you, Rabbi.
Commandment is a negative commandment. You can't hear me? Can you hear me
Not
now?
very well. Now, yes. Me.
Now you can hear me? Okay.
Thank you.
So the first two commandments include, so the first commandment, which is a positive commandment, includes all the 248 positive commandments. And the second commandment, which is a negative commandment, includes the 365 prohibitions. Let's go to the next page. All the mitzvahs are in essence an affirmation of of monotheism and a rejection of idolatry. The theme of the first two commandments, 248 positive commandments, you shalls, are an affirmation of the one God. And the 365 prohibitions, you shall not, are a repudiation of idolatry. And that is why we only heard the first two commandments, I am God, your God, and you shall not have any other God, directly from the mouth of that God said us the first two of the 10 commandments, and the remainder were transmitted by Moses. Look in the Talmud, Makos 24:8. Because for God to say the rest of the commandments was unnecessary, since the first two incorporate the whole Torah. The fact that God spoke just two commandments sends a clear message that Judaism can be summed up in just two themes: accept one God, and do not accept idolatry. From this it follows that every mitzvah at its core is a rejection of idolatry. So you might see where we're leading with this. We're going to get to tell you that the fact that you know that you would give up your life not to serve other gods, that should inspire you to keep all the commandments, not just, give up your life for God, also, kosher and Shabbos and all the other commandments. So now you're seeing where we're leading to. We have taken from the Zohar an idea that basically says, well, actually the breakdown of all of Judaism is an acceptance of God's oneness and a rejection of idolatry. And since that is an item that you are willing to give up your life for, it follows that the same will apply to all the commandments. But still, we have only stated facts. We have not explained anything. We have not explained how every commandment is an expression of accepting God's oneness, and how every negative commandment is a rejection of idolatry. That is going to be the next, because these next 5 chapters
We can't hear you, Rabbi. Next
are,
slide.
so to speak, a long philosophical. Chapter 20. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I don't know what's
Sort
wrong
of.
with the internet.
Yes,
I'm-
kinda caught
I'm
off.
gonna have to.
It's you freeze every
It
now
might.
and again.
Like
Yeah,
right
every
now,
now
you're
and
frozen.
Yeah.
I lost track what the 5 chapters are from. I'm sorry.
Say that again.
If you could repeat, Rabbi, if you don't mind, the 5 chapters of what?
Okay. Yeah, okay. So these next 5 chapters are the 5 chapters that are going to explain at depth.
Okay. Mhm.
Yeah, are going to explain in depth this idea that every mitzvah is a rejection of idolatry. So the breakdown of the 5 chapters are like this. Chapter 20 is going to reveal how the world is nothing.
Frozen.
Rabbi, it's
Relationship to
Frozen.
there are
it's really not.
maybe I'm
It's
gonna
really
add.
not. It's off and on, off and on.
All right, let me
For
open up my
some
phone.
reason. The
Yeah.
connection.
You have,
Yeah,
you have
Open
to
up my
but we can't get a full sentence from you.
Yeah, we're missing a lot.
Yeah, I'm opening up my phone.
Thank
Sounds
you.
like Joe Biden, Rabbi.
No, you need to be closer to your server or
maybe moving.
have a hotspot.
Although there are times where he does perfectly well,
Yeah.
Right.
on
I
these
know.
on these meetings, and he's sitting in the same place. So
Right.
Yeah, somebody's stealing your internet.
I'm in. Yeah,
Maybe he has.
that might be it.
Maybe he has Spectrum like I do, which is terrible.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, no, now you go
Oh, now
in
you have to,
and do
well, now
all
he has to
sorts of
turn his
bizarre
computer.
things.
He has to
gotta-
turn his computer off then, if he's using his phone.
Oh my gosh, Rabbi. I can't figure it out what I'm looking at. Yeah.
Too much rabbi, too much rabbi.
Two rabbis. No, it's okay now, I think.
It's almost like the 2 commandments that we couldn't handle.
Two rabbis at the same
Okay,
time.
are you
Oh,
I
guys-
no.
know, a double dose of rabbis.
Thank God. Double dose of good. Thank God.
Is it double or not anymore?
No, it's good
Double.
now.
We-
Okay, it's good.
Yeah, I think
Sound
so.
wise, but
Sounds
At least
much
you're
better.
doing the same thing. Previously, I don't know how you were doing. It was different things going on. You doing different things. Wow. I
Oh,
can't-
yeah,
I-
yeah. It was very
Okay.
strange. At least
No,
we
but-
can laugh. At least we got to laugh, so
Yeah, right.
we need that.
your phone is
Yeah.
great,
We
but
do need to laugh. Yes. thank
Yes,
God.
yes, for sure.
you're pixelated on the computer.
Yeah, yeah.
Pixelated.
Pixelated.
You know what? I'll share the. I'll share this.
Yeah, other people call it buffering.
Yeah,
Bu-
that's right. That's
buffering.
right. That's what it was. Buffering.
Buffering. Okay. Well, at least you can hear me now, and it should be
Yes.
smooth.
Yes, better.
Yes, much better.
Thank you.
Okay. Like
Thank you,
like
Rabbi.
Anita said, it was like when God spoke the 10 Commandments, and we heard things
I
at
love
once.
it. You'll
Oh,
be
you-
surprised. He's in everything.
You
That's
should
right.
you should do a side by side with your phone.
Don't give the rabbis ideas.
Yeah, don't give
Yeah.
him anything else to figure out.
He can get creative.
I don't know. You're saying
This is
because
good. This is good the way it is. Just leave it.
whatever, we'll deal with what we have. Okay, I'll have to go with this for now. Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So all that being said, let's get back to the 5 chapters that I was going to tell you that we're going to discuss the next couple of weeks. How does that sound?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
chapter 20, which is this week, we're going to discuss how the world is nothing in comparison to God, to the Creator. Chapter 21, we're going to discuss how there are really 2 outlooks. There's God's outlook, in which, I'm going to change the spotlight. There. Okay, that should be better. All right, there are 2 outlooks. One outlook, is that any better, by the way? Yeah, that should be better. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
100 times.
All right, okay. In fact, I'm gonna hide that video so it doesn't disturb you seeing me twice. One outlook is, and I'll stop sharing for right now as I'm talking. And I know I'm pixelated because it's on a phone, but it is what it is. Okay. It looks frozen to me, but that's because I'm looking on the computer. Okay. Well, one outlook is from God's perspective, and the other outlook is from our perspective. From God's perspective, we are truly nothing, and from our perspective, there is we are something. Let's put it that way. Chapter 22. We're going to discuss how the world has 2 different domains: domain of holiness and a domain of impurity. In chapter 23, we're going to discuss how the positive commandments draw us to the domain of holiness. Chapter 24, we're going to discuss how the negative commandments draw us to the domain of unholiness and separate us from God. And in chapter 25, we will end off how, therefore, based on all the above discussions, chapter 22, 24, it is very easy to love God and do all his commandments. That's going to be the breakup. But the basic thing, but within that, there's a mini series in the next 2 chapters. And that mini series basically is going to talk about the oneness of God, or what we can call non-dual Judaism. Okay. You all know, we all say the Shema. We say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And when we do that, we We say God is one. And it's one of the great ideas of Judaism. It's a monotheistic religion. But what does it actually mean that God is one? What's the meaning? What's so important about saying that God is one? Any thoughts? What's the meaning to you that God is one? When you say the Lord is God, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Why is that such an important statement?
I've got it as God is all and God is everything.
Or there's no other God like him.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else? I'm taking thoughts now. I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just curious because we all say the Shema.
Yeah.
I just see it where some people get distracted by various ways of powers in the world, such as nature or whatever, the sea, or somebody having particular talent, and they divide that from Hashem, and it doesn't even make any sense because, I mean, if it's a creation and it's actually in the works, some things you can see, some things you can't see, but it's everything is absolutely managed and created and
By God.
generated by God.
So
So
you're saying we shouldn't worship the
what's so
dollar.
hard? I'm sorry, Rabbi. Sorry.
So you're saying we shouldn't worship the dollar.
The dollar is completely controlled by
Yeah.
God. It's completely controlled by God. So people, I think it's like a lowering of people's intelligence when
No,
they
I got
start
it. Yeah.
idolizing.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Very nice idea. Yep.
Not
So we got
thinking.
thank you. So we got a lot of nice ideas on the meaning and the content of when we say God is one. The lack of other powers, everything is godly. Don't get confused by the items that are around us,
Right.
which are ultimately creations. So the next couple chapters are going to develop these ideas, and the idea that we call the non-dual reality, the non-duality of the world, in which, as Adam said, the world is ultimately one with God. And we have to start. Okay, let me just, before we go, because it's now 12:30, it's halfway through. So before I jump into this, I just want to recap what we said so far today. We basically said today that we're going to have to try and find a way that our deep-seated love of God to the point where we're willing to give up our lives for God and inspire us in all the commandments. We started off giving you an idea by telling you, hey, the basis of all the commandments are the first two commandments, which are that there is one God and there are no other gods, which is the same idea of giving up your life for your ultimate faith in God. And therefore, we see the concept exist that all the commandments are somehow included within the single commandment of belief in God and not giving into idolatry. And so that is going to send us on a trajectory to discover how does that work. And we're going to start with the idea that God is one. So here is the philosophical problem. The philosophical problem was saying that God is one, right? Because God's oneness is the antithesis of idolatry, right? So we have to explore God's oneness. Again, in order to explore how all the commandments are included within the first two, we're going to have to explore God's oneness. In other words, we have to explore why idolatry is so bad. So we're going to have to explore God's oneness. So the problem is that God's oneness is not so easily understood. Let me add more to that. I don't just mean that God's oneness is not easily understood. What I mean is, if you say someone is single, right, that means they're single. That means they're not married. You can't be single and be married. If you say someone is an only child, they can't be an only child and have a sibling. If we say God is one, and by that we mean, and we'll prove that with verses, that God is the only one, then there can't be anything else. And the problem is that there are other things in this world. There are many, many other items in this world. Let me get a prayer book just to show you. It's an example of a prayer. Example of a prayer. Where we take this idea. In other words, let me put it this way. A lot of times when we say God is one, people tend to think of that, oh, there aren't any other gods. But in Judaism, it means much more than that. It means much more than just that there aren't any other gods. It means that God is the only one. Okay, not that God is one, but God is the only one. Not only the only one God, the only single existence. Let's take a look
Right.
at a prayer. Huh?
Right.
Yeah, let's take a look at a prayer we say over here. This is in the morning prayers. I'm going to flip the camera around if I can figure that out. Okay, here's the prayer we say every morning. You were the same before the world was. This is, by the way, in the Chabad Siddur, page 17, the blue siddur. You were the same before the world was created. You are the same since the world has been created. You are the same in this world. You are the same in the world to come. The point is that nothing's changed in God. Nothing's been changed. God's the same. We also have a verse. I am the Lord, I have not changed. Nothing changed. Nothing changed within God. The problem is that seemingly there is a change. Before there was God, now there's God and the world. So we have to explain how the world does not take away from God being one, and how could God not change? If till now God was God without the world, now even if the world is created by God, but it's still something, wouldn't you say?
His changes are through his creation. That's how he finds pleasing. It's pleasing to him because it is nice to be renewed. I mean, that's a whole concept of he directs us to renew things all the time, but that the spark is never changed. The positiveness, the faith, the energy, those are things that never change, no matter what gets renewed.
If we say, if the verse says, and I'll bring the verse here. Here's the verse. For I, the Lord, have not changed. That means he hasn't changed. You know, full stop. Okay, so that's the question: is how can we say that God has not changed if 5,784 years ago God created a world? That's our question and our problem. How do they know to always do the grass on Tuesdays at 12? Okay. All right. So we're going to be exploring this question, and ultimately, by the way, the answer. A lot of times, questions. Let me just put this: good questions, a lot of times, are going to be better than the answer. Why? There's a reason it's a good question. Sometimes because it's not within our capacity to understand. A great example of this is why do good people suffer? Okay, we don't really have a full capacity to understand. We're not meant to fully understand. So the same thing I'm going to say over here is that when we talk about how God doesn't change despite the creation of the world, is something that one can contemplate and meditate on for the rest of your life and never fully grasp it, because ultimately it's beyond the human understanding. It's something that's godly. But we will get to a somewhat of a better understanding of it. That's really what we aim for in our lives, to get to a better understanding. In fact, as I think I mentioned many times, the Jewish philosophers used to say, the ultimate knowledge is to know that you don't know. Now, what's the point of that? It means you're supposed to not only, it's easy to say, I don't know. The ultimate knowledge is to know what you don't know. They say by the same thing I hear from people in medicine. The more they learn about medicine, the more they know how much they just don't know, right? And that's the ultimate sign of knowledge, when you know what you don't know. It's the same thing I'd say over here. It's easy to say, God is one, we don't understand. But when you know why you don't, how you can't understand, what you know and what you don't know, you connect with the idea much greater. And that's really what we're going to pull off over here. So let's read some text. In order to have clarity in this matter, we first need to mention briefly over the next 2 chapters the concept and deep ideology of God's non-duality. One of the most striking contributions of the Kabbalah, which became a central idea in Hasidic thought, was a highly innovative reading of monotheistic ideas. The belief in one God is no longer perceived as the mere rejection of other deities or intermediaries, but a denial of any existence outside of God. I'm going to read that again. The belief in one God is no longer perceived as a mere rejection of other deities or intermediaries, but a denial of any existence outside of God. As Rabbi Moshe Cordovero explains, the classic Kabbalist, also known as the Ramak, that's his acronym, before anything was emanated, there was only the infinite one, Ein Sof, which was all that existed. And even after he brought into being everything which exists, there is nothing but him, and you cannot find anything that exists apart from him, God forbid. For nothing exists devoid of God's power. For if there were, he would be limited and subject to duality, God forbid. Rather, God is everything that exists, but everything that exists is not God. Nothing is devoid of his godliness. Everything is within it. There is nothing but it. Beautiful, 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 right?
Yeah,
I think so, Ali.
I think so.
This idea,
Yes.
Yeah, but it takes a lifetime to understand it, but it's beautiful. Especially the line, God is everything that exists, but everything that exists is not God. We will explore that chapters 23, 24. This idea is often referred to as the non-duality of God. To say that the created world is a separate substance from God would imply a certain duality, that there are 2 types of existences in the universe, the divine and non-divine. In the non-dual vision, there is only one existence or substance, God. Everything else is simply dissolved or absorbed in that oneness. In other words, the way one may imagine it is that there's, one may imagine it that there is God. He's one substance. That's the only word we're going to use now. And he vivifies a separate substance, which is called the world. And that's probably how most people understood it. You would pray to God. God is the great being that creates this substance, because that's generally, by the way, what we mean when we say the word creation, right? In our world, when we say creation, we mean a separate substance. If I am going to create a home, if I'm going to create a project, if I'm going to create everything that I create as a human being creates, you're creating something that is separate from you. Therefore, generally, when human beings talk about God being the creator, the automatic assumption would be that you're creating something separate from yourself. In the second section of the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe goes on at length and says that is not true here in this case. Why? Because we're mixing up the word creation. We're so used to using the word creation wrong. We're so used to using the word creation in the wrong way. When in reality, what we do is not creation. We actually don't create anything. We move things around. I'll say that again. We don't create, we move things around, okay? When I create a cup, I'm not creating a cup. I am taking pre-existing material and I am forming it into a cup. So what I do actually is not creation. I actually form things. We can call it formation. Human beings do not do any creation. They tell the joke of the what was it? They tell the joke of the sorry, I'm going to hide this video. They tell the joke of the scientists. They finally come to God and say, God, we figured out how to create life. We don't need you anymore. It's time that God, you can retire. So God says, sure, tell me how you do it. So first they bend down, they pick up some earth, and God says, get some of your own stuff, you know? Don't, start with your own stuff. So what's with these Spawn people? So I can't wait till we expand the Chabad, and I can sit in an office where I can hear myself. Okay. So we don't create anything. God creates. God creates, and create. So we get confused with the word create. So what the Tanya here is telling us is that we have to understand is that there is no separate substance from God, as there is by human creation, because human creation is very different. The reason I am different from the item that I create is because I didn't actually create it. There's me and there's this, and I just form it. But in God's creation, there isn't something separate from him that he formed. There isn't a globe that he turned into an earth. It's all from within him. So it's not a separate substance. With that idea in mind, let's continue reading. All right. Obviously, the non-dual reality is an extremely... Oh, sorry. Let me go back up here. All right, there. In a non-dual vision, there is only one existence or substance, God. Everything else simply dissolves or absorbed in that oneness. This concept is one of the central aspects of man's purpose in life, to establish this truth and to spread it to the utmost extent of his influence. This is not merely an idea, but a way of life which is expressed in daily life and which permeates the whole inner being of a chassid. So the Rebbe writes in a letter that knowing the non-dual reality can change your entire life. It changes everything that you do. Just a simple example. The world is no longer an obstacle to anything that you want to do. But how could it be? If the world is godly, if there's a non-dual reality, if everything is godly, there is nothing getting in your way. There may be challenges, but those challenges themselves are godly, and they definitely don't want you to fail. Just to the example that we brought in chapter 7 of Tanya, right? We spoke about a king who hired a harlot to test his son. Even the harlot herself wants the son to overcome, right? That's a real mind-changing idea. The same thing we can understand over here is the world is no longer a dark place, which there's evil all around inherently that I have to circumvent. Even the evil that exists is actually godly. Now, we'll have to explain in later chapters, so how does evil actually exist? But this is a very big change from, I think, some other possibly religions that believe that, there's a power called Satan and he has his own powers from God. There's no separate powers. Again, I don't know if that is their belief, but, there are no, and it's not important, really. The point is that in our lives, knowing this truth can influence your entire day. It influences how you live your entire day, because everything is godly and everything is there created for a godly purpose. Just to give you one simple example, I might write about it in my email this week because it's so special. Let's take AI. Everybody's worried about AI, right? Everybody's also worried about AI nowadays. Well, a fascinating thing. Why is AI created? AI is actually created to do good things. For example, it wrote this Tanya class. No, I'm kidding. AI, for example, Chabad just rolled out. There are many people that have pictures and videos of the Rabbi, and they're now using AI technology to find yourself. So I knew I've been by the Rabbi many times, but I was never able to find a picture. With the AI, I uploaded a picture of myself as a baby, and I found 2 pictures of myself visiting the Rebbe. I would have never found it. You know why? You know why? Because I didn't recognize myself. Now that my mother took her like a minute to recognize herself. She's like, "Wow, I forgot. Oh yeah, that was my jacket. So that's how I used to dress." But that's really what AI is created for. In other words,
So
we have to
AI
understand.
recognize you in the picture.
Yeah, it's amazing. You recognize me, you recognize my mother. It was very impressive. Like I would have never in a million years known, because babies change a lot. It was very, I had a picture of myself when I was 2 months old and a picture of myself when I was 2 years old, and it was like an in between, and I was able to pick it up, and it was very impressive. So again, I'm just bringing up the idea that people keep, let's give another example. There's an election coming up. Everybody's all worried. Everybody's all worried. Some people are worried this person's going to win. Some people are worried that person's going to win. Most people are worried that either of them are going to win, right? But whatever your belief is, people are worried. But if we live with the balance of life, that everything is godly, and that ultimately doesn't mean bad things don't happen, but it's godly. And so that gives us some comfort in life. And this doomsday worry that people have, that we have some promises for God. There's no promise that I am going to live, so to speak, but there's the promise that Jewish people will continue. We are promised anti-Semitism will not wipe us out. No Iran or Hezbollah can wipe out the Jewish people. We have certain promises that we know are true. And so while we should do what we can, we shouldn't get hysterical, as some Jews today are, like this is the end of everything. We've been here for a while. But all that comes from a feeling. It's a very relieving feeling when you feel that everything is godly. But let us continue. In the Midrash, God is referred to as the only one and only one, Deuteronomy Rabbi, implying that he is the only existence. And in the liturgy, it is written, everybody believes of him that he is the only one, which implies that he remains now exactly the same as he was before the world was created, when he was alone and there was no other entity in the universe. As we say, you were alone before the world was created. You are alone since the world has been created. I showed you that prayer, which in a non-dual reading means he is literally not changed. And God remains the only existence in the universe, even after he created the world. As the verse states, I, God, have not changed. Clearly, the world does exist. Even non-dual Judaism does not maintain that what we see is an illusion. It simply sees the universe as subsumed within God for having no separate identity from him. This means that God's sole existence prior to creation has not changed, since his creation did not, I hope you enjoy hearing the baby, since his creation did not produce any new entity outside of God, right? So if God's creation created a new entity outside of God, then something would have changed. But if we understand everything's within God, then before the world, there was only God. After the world, there's only God, right? Again, if God created a separate substance called the world, then there would have been a change. Before there was God, now there's God in the world. God wouldn't be the only one. But now that we understand the world is subsumed within God, there was God before the world, and there's still only God, as he says, because neither the creation of this world, something from nothing,
Oh, you have it.
nor the creation of all the spiritual worlds brought about any change in God's non-duality.
So cute. Thank you, Rabbi.
Aw,
So
how cute.
beautiful young lady. You have it.
Hi. Shalom.
You have it. Even when you have a game, there's still only God. You are a part of God. How does that sound?
Right.
Good?
That's
Yeah?
right.
Yep. Let's continue. She wants to listen to the class. For just as he was the only singular and exclusive existence before the physical and spiritual worlds were created, so too he remains the only singular and exclusive existence after he created them. And now he's going to ask the question, but if the world does exist, how can we say that God is the only singular and exclusive existence? So we're going to start to give the answer. And the answer is actually going to be split up in two parts. answer number one is going to be that the world is insignificant. And then we're going to say, but even that insignificant world is subsumed within God. So I'm going to say that one more time. First, we're going to present that the world is like a nothing. Okay, let's say, a speck of dust. Okay. And then we're going to say, and even that speck of dust is also within God. But they're two separate stages. But first, we want to lay the foundation. The world is a speck of dust, so to speak. As he says, because in his presence, everything is considered zero, as the Zohar says, literally as if it were null and void, Isaiah. The world does exist, but in God's presence, it has no independent identity in existence, since it's perceived as part of his. Okay, he's jumping ahead. The point that he's going to make the first section is that the world is just a speck of dust to God. Now, there are many ways to get to that conclusion. Now, many of you may have flown on a plane, and you get to that conclusion by flying in a plane, or many of you may have seen pictures from space, and you get to that conclusion, by seeing the vastness of the universe. But Judaism is not the Tanya is not a science book. So, and on top of that, when the Tanya says that the world is insignificant to God, obviously he chooses to make it significant. But I mean, naturally it's insignificant to God. It is not going to come at a point from science, because when Tanya says the world is insignificant, it actually means the whole universe. Okay, so not only our world, the entire universe is like nothing to God. And for that, we're going to have to come to a totally different explanation. You can't give the scientific explanation. Oh, I'm flying in a plane. I see we look so small. We look like matchboxes. Okay, that's a nice idea. That's a good idea too. But the Tanya is going to come to it from a totally different arena, from a totally different area. We're going to focus on the root source of the world's energy, and we're going to get to it from that. But just remember, when the Tanya speaks about how the world is null and void in the face of God, we mean the entire universe. Okay, so anybody who's getting inspired by the universe, and which you should be, because God created that. Remember that all that entire universe is like a speck of dust to God, as we will explain in next week's class. So I want to sum up.
And basically, Rabbi, just the physicality of anything would be submitting itself to God. So anything that is a.
Okay, one second. I'll get to that in a second. I just wanted to sum up. So the ultimately, what did we learn today? I just want to sum up what we learned today, so we all remember where we're going. We started off with jumping off of chapter 18 and 19. We know that we have this hidden love to God that will give us the ability to give up our lives for God. We want to say that ability gives us the ability to serve God in any mitzvahs, any commandments that we are given. And how does that happen? So first, we prove this idea from the fact that we say the first of the 10 commandments are the source of all the commandments. So that tells us that the belief in one God and rejecting idolatry is really the basis of all the commandments. And now we are on a long exploration. How is it that every mitzvah is an acceptance of God's oneness, and every sin is a sin of idolatry? And that's what the journey we're on. And in order to get there, we are first starting off on exploration of the non-dual reality of the world. And so we start off with the philosophical idea that obviously we know that the world is not, when we say God is one, we don't just mean that there are no other gods, but we actually mean that there is nothing else besides for God. When we say in the Aleinu, Ein od milvado, there's nothing besides for him, we mean literally there's nothing besides for him. Not just there's no other gods, there is nothing besides for God. And we spoke about how this is such an important element in our lives, how we would live our lives differently if we walk around realizing that everything is within God. We still have to understand how is everything within God, because we do see a world, we actually see it. And so that's going to be our discussion. And next week, we're going to start off discussing how the world is like a speck of dust in front of God. And when we say the world, we mean the entire universe. The lesson I want you to walk away with today is the importance of exploring this idea in your lives that everything is subsumed within God's reality and how that can change how you live your life. And I will stop there and I will open up to questions and comments.